In this screencast, we're going to have a look at field sizes, validation, and input mask. Okay, so first of all, we're going to start with changing the field size in a database table. I'm going to have a look at the Year 12 AICT database. Let's have a look at our customers table and put it into design view. Okay, we'll start with company name. And if we go down to the general tab, we can see the field size. Now, 255 characters is a lot of characters for a company name. So we need to think of a number by default which is sensible. It's not allowing excessive storage space in the database, but also some companies might have a very long name, so we need to accommodate for that as well. So I'm going to go with 60. We can do that for contact first name, we can do that for contact surname, and keep working our way down, adding suitable, what we consider to be suitable field sizes for these database fields. Now, I'm not going to do all of these, okay, this is just a couple of examples, but we could say that the contact first name, if we think of somebody who we know who's got a long name, count how many characters they've got in their name, perhaps we could say 10 characters at most in a first name. Surnames could be a lot longer, they could be double-barreled. So again, we'll go with 60, which is more than enough, but it's not excessive amount of characters. Now, that's okay for names. I know I've mentioned this before in lessons, but one thing I do want to draw your attention to is the town name. Okay, now 255 is still too many characters for a town name, and if we just think to our local area where we live, we can think of a town that's got quite a long name, but if this is a customer database, you're taking bookings from all over the UK, you can have customers living anywhere, so we have to make sure that we accommodate for a UK-wide customer base. If we have a look at this website here, I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce this name, okay? It's the longest train station name in the UK, probably the longest, and it is the longest town name in the UK as well, okay? So what I want to know is how many characters are in this name. I'll right click and I'll copy it, and very quickly I'm just going to paste it into Microsoft Word. Okay, now I'm not going to waste my time counting those characters individually. I'm going to go to Review, Word Count, and it will tell me there are 60 characters there, okay, with no spaces. So as long as I've got 60 characters in my field size, it will accommodate that name. Okay, so back over to my database, and for the town, I'm also going to change the field size to 60. There we go. So you get the idea. So what you need to do now is work through each table in your database and change the field sizes. I'm going to go through validation, input masks as well, so we'll do those next, and then you can work through each table adding field size or changing field size and adding your validation and input masks if appropriate. Okay, so next we're going to have a look at adding validation rules and adding validation text. So back in our database, I'm still going to continue working with the customers table, and I'm going to choose the contact first name. Now the validation rule, where you type the rule and where you add the validation text, you'll find under the general tab down here. Now the purpose of a validation rule is to restrict and check really on the data types that a user enters. It's not foolproof. For example, it can't stop you mistyping or misspelling your name, but it can make you enter text or not enter text, or enter numbers between a certain range, for example. So let's have a look at adding a validation rule for contact first name. The validation rule I'm going to use is to force the user to enter a name. Okay, so I'm going to click next to validation rule. We don't want to take customer bookings without a contact first name. We don't want to take customer bookings without a surname, a building name or number, street, town, county, postcode, etc. So we need to make sure that we force our end user to enter some data into the database. We would hope they would get it correct. They might enter it wrong, they might spell it wrong, but at least we flagged up to them that they do need to enter that data into the database. So in order to make the user add a name into the database, in this example, in the validation rule, I'm going to enter is not null. Okay, now that's the database language for making sure that that field cannot be empty. I'm also going to add some validation text. It's no good having the database just beeping at the end user if they make a mistake. We need to give them some precise constructive feedback on how they can rectify the mistake, the data entry mistake that they've made. So in here, I'm going to say you must enter A, and then we'll go with the field name. So you must enter, or I'll drop the A and say contact first name. Okay, so that's looking good. So we'll save the table. Okay, and I'm getting a little message here that says some data may be lost because I've changed the property for the field size. Do I want to continue? Yes, I do. Okay, and I'm also going to get another warning that says the data integrity rules have changed and existing data may not be valid for the new rules. Access will go through and check, and it does say this process may take a long time. Realistically, it doesn't. I'll show you how quick it is. So click on yes, and it's done it already. Okay, so I'm now going to put my database back into design view. Okay, and I'm going to create a new record. So company name will say, well, I've got Microsoft. We'll say Tesco. Okay, the contact title, Mr. Contact first name, I'm going to miss that out. And as I've missed it out, it has let me move on to the next field, but it's you can see the validation message here. You must enter a contact first name. So I'll click on OK, and I'll put a name in. So we'll put Steve. Okay, and then I can move on. So the idea is if we make a data entry mistake, if we don't enter data where we should enter data, then the database will give us a message to let us know what we should have done. Okay, so just very quick recap on that one. So back into design view, I've done some validation on the postcode as well. Hang on a second. Just quickly enter the postcode, and now there we are. It should let me save and go back to design view. Okay, so quick recap on that one. The validation rule to make the database force us to enter something is not null. And the validation text is some constructive advice you've got to give the end user. So in this case, you must enter contact's first name. Okay. And finally, we'll have a quick look at adding an input mask. Now the input mask lets you define how users must enter data. It helps keep consistency across the database. A good example would be forcing users to enter a UK telephone number in the set format. Let's take a landline example, where you've got, for example, 01495, so you need 5 digits, then often a space followed by the 6 digits of the local number. Another good example would be postcodes, and that's the one that I'm going to do. So back over into the database, and I'm into the postcode field. So with the correct field selected, I'm going to work my way down, and looking at the input mask here, this is where we're going to put the input mask. Now on Moodle, I've added a couple of documents. Okay, they're Word documents, and we've got some example of validation rules. Okay, so you can have a look at those to help you. And we've also got some examples of input masks. Okay, and it shows you here what each character does. So for example, a 0 means a number 0 to 9 must be entered, where for example, the question mark means a letter A to Z must be entered. So there's a description there of which each of these do. So you can have a go with this one, but you can actually break down what it does and how it works. I've also added a link on both Year 12 and Year 13 Moodle coursework courses to the Microsoft support website. Okay, and there's an article here about input masks. Okay, but the most important bit is, as we scroll down, very similar really to what's in the Word documents, but just an additional point of reference, characters that define the input mask. So we can see, for example, going back to the postcode example, we started with an L, and users must enter a letter. Okay, now it's important to note that the L makes the end user enter a letter, whereas the postcode means the users can enter a letter. Notice the difference, must and can. Must, can, but don't have to. Okay, and that's important when we look at different postcode formats. Let's take a couple of examples. Okay, so for example, NP 11 7NG. Okay, that's one example of a postcode, and if you live in an area where your postcode has got a double digit here, that's what a postcode looks like. But postcodes can be shorter. For example, we can take a Worcester based postcode, WR6 6AJ. So in the example of validating or setting the input mask, we need to make sure that users have to enter the first letter, so that's what the L does, but they don't have to enter a second letter, because if we made them do that, we wouldn't be able to enter this postcode. They can, okay, that's what the question mark does. There, so they can enter a letter, but they don't have to, okay. So we must make sure that we get the formatting of the input masks correct. So let's go back over to the database then, and we'll add the input mask. So that's L question mark 09 space 0 L L. Now that is going to force us in a moment to make sure we enter the postcode in the correct format. So let's save what we've done. Okay. We don't need the field size there being 255 characters. There are only 7 characters in a postcode, so we'll change that to 7. Right, if we save, and we're getting the error, the message here again saying that because we've changed field sizes, some data might be lost. Okay, we've got to do that, so we just click on yes. So we'll go over to our tables data sheet view. Okay, and I'm going to try and add a postcode that's, well, let's do both examples. Okay, so first of all, we'll say NP11 7NG, that one works. Okay, we'll do the shorter Worcester postcode, which was WR6 6AJ, and I'm going to type a little bit of nonsense in here. Okay, and as I'm trying to do that, I'm getting a message from Access saying the value you entered isn't appropriate for the input mask specified for this field. So we've got the database telling us that what we've entered isn't correct, and we have to click on OK. We'll keep going around in that loop until we enter one which is. Okay then, so far we've done a change to the field size, we've added validation rules, we've added validation text, and we've also added input masks. Now you'll need to go through your database table or tables and find suitable fields for which you can add validation. Okay, there's lots of tables there for you to choose from, so you can go through changing the field sizes and adding the validation. If I were you, I would write a couple of validation or input masks. You've got the Word documents to help you. Okay, so write one, use one, test it, make sure it works, and then go through the database, adding these to all the other suitable fields that require either an input mask or require validation. And finally, as you're doing these, it would be a good idea, or now is a good time, to add the validation, the input mask, and any other additional information, for example field sizes, that you might not have included in your database planning documents. I'm going to run out of time on this screencast in a moment, so I can only go up to 15 minutes and I'm nearly on 14 already. So I'm going to create another short screencast in a moment. Okay, I suggest you watch that one as well before you carry on, so that you make sure you get the paperwork done at the same time. Okay, so watch the other screencast. I'm going to create that next, and then you can make sure that you get your database fields updated correctly with the appropriate field sizes, validation and input masks, but also, and most importantly, or equally as importantly, you make sure that you've got your planning documents up to date and they match what you've got in your actual database tables.